So my name is Tess Seacat, and I was born July 29, 1969. And I was born on a naval base at Yokosuka, Japan. And I immigrated here in, November 1970.
Hi, my name is Sunny Seacat. I was born in San Fernando, Pampanga, Philippines in 1969, July 11, 1969. First moved to America in the summer of 1973. Was probably about 4 years old.
My dad immigrated to the United States right out of high school. He joined the U.S. Navy. He was more of an adventurer, and he didn't want to go into the family business. So he went really right out of high school graduation. He went and joined the U.S. Navy. And my mom, she was valedictorian of her high school. What they do in the Philippines is the University of the Philippines selects a scholarship student in every high school, and they get to go to school, go to university on full scholarship. And she always wanted to be a nurse, and she wanted to always go to the United States. So she worked hard to get there.
Well, my father was going to college in the Philippines, and there wasn't going to be many opportunities for him after he graduated. So he was aware of an opportunity to join the U.S. Navy, and when he was recruited and ultimately was accepted and joined, it was after a couple of years that we immigrated here as a family in 1973.
The town that I grew up in Vallejo, in the mid to late 70s, was a new and emerging Filipino cultural center, like a town. And then I went to the local parochial school like 5 miles away in Benicia, and they weren't quite ready yet for the changing demographics of the area. And so when I was in 5th grade, one of the kids told me about older students like 8th graders walking around the school with a song on with a radio and a song playing the Pink Floyd song, "We Don't Need No Education," but instead they sang "We Don't Need No Filipinos." And then when I was in high school, I went to high school in Vallejo, and in 9th grade, I got a lot of comments back from the Filipino girls that felt that I wasn't Filipino enough. So I was very confused during the whole growing up part about what I was supposed to be and not be, because I was just who I was.
We went to a lot of military schools, and because of that, the military schools and the bases were pretty diverse. But the one time we started to go to a public school outside of the base was in Chicago, and most of that community was Eastern Europe, Jewish community, Caucasian. And it wasn't until going through the yearbook that I would see that there weren't really a lot of other Filipino students or classmates that looked like me. So I think that was maybe the first consciousness of seeing that we were a minority, or at least we had a lower representation in our class.
One of my favorite shows was Kung Fu with David Carradine, and he was the actor on the show, but I didn't know he was Caucasian playing an Asian actor, or the Kung Fu the lead. And so I was confused by that too. I just didn't understand that he was supposed to be Asian, because that's what the show was about.
I had more of a identification to being Filipino. So seeing characters on television like Sulu on Star Trek, I didn't really even relate to him because his character was, I think, Japanese. Or even if you saw Kung Fu martial artists on television, I didn't necessarily relate to them because I identified a lot more strong to being Filipino. So I think the experience for me was one of not seeing Filipino characters on television and in the media. It wasn't until I got older in college that understanding that Asian American or Asian Pacific Islander community was lumped together or grouped together, and so then I could relate to a little bit more of those characters.
Oh, the one I remember most is Connie Chung. She was a news anchor, and she actually was always very put together and did her job well. And so I just made me think about how, you know, Asian women can, you know, I never thought about it. It's just that we could do whatever we decided to do, you know, so it didn't make me, I didn't think as a second thing about it. I didn't think that she was the only one. I was just, she was there. She was getting. The first time I got recognized for being Asian American and Asian American services, that community service that I had performed, and that was when I graduated college from USC. I received an Order of the Laurel, which was an award you didn't apply for, but you were nominated for. You won. And so what I didn't realize is that the community service that I had done for the Asian Pacific community at USC qualified me for that, and an administrator had nominated me for it.
So one of our uncles passed away from leukemia, and he was looking for a bone marrow donor. And what we found out was bone marrow donor matches have to do with a lot of genetics, and there wasn't a big Asian American donor bank. So one of the things that we got involved with in the community was to register Asian Americans in the community with getting blood samples and their blood types to find out if we can increase the chances of finding bone marrow donor matches. So I think that was, you know, first recognition of being involved in the community that had something to do specifically with ethnicity and it being Asian American. The chances of finding a match was going to most likely be with someone with your similar genetic code. So I think that was our way of being a part of it and giving back to the community. So we have been married for 23 years, going on to 24.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We first met at USC. I invited Tess to a Philippine club meeting, hoping to get to know her a little bit more, become friends. And we were actually introduced by a mutual friend, Grant Imahara, who a lot of people may know from Mythbusters. And he was a classmate of Tess.
He was my physics partner.
So he was an engineering student who decided that engineering wasn't for him and wanted to get into media, and got a great, is a great role model for a lot of kids to get into engineering, but also just to, you know, it's cool to be smart and geeky at the same time. But we love Brandon. So. We both were active in the student organizations, and I think at the time USC's Asian Pacific American community was about 20% of the campus. So, you know, and being in Los Angeles, we knew that it had some, it did reflect a bit of the community.
Well, and the Filipino Club in particular was transitioning from an international student organization to an Asian American organization. So we were doing activities that were more like cultural fairs, and switching now to things that were more with the Hawaii Club as an example, or the Asian Business Association, or the Asian Engineering. You know, there was more affiliation on the Asian American side of things by, you know, for the Filipino Club.
And I think that's what helped the transition from going from the college experience of where clubs were, like you mentioned, a business organization that wanted to, you know, Asian American students that were studying business that wanted to support one another, so that when they got into the workplace, that they would have leadership opportunities, a place for them to demonstrate their capabilities of being able to lead a group, lead meetings. So I think that's where we see that opportunity is a great thing for young people to get involved with, because that really helps in the next phase when you go into the workplace. Transitioning from being involved on campus and going into the workplace, you had a little bit more of a safety net on campus because that was the place for you to learn about yourself. In the workplace, there isn't really room to identify yourself as the Asian American engineer in the meeting. You just had to be the engineer in the meeting. You just had to prove yourself by your work and your professionalism. So I think that was also a learning experience to not depend on the fact that you may not have a colleague that looks like you in the room, in the boardroom or in the meeting room.
When I first started working, there were many times where I was like the only woman, Asian woman, or brunette woman under the age of 30. Like most of the meeting was attended by generally men over 50. And this was in the area of transportation. But I oftentimes felt very isolated and alone at work, you know, but some of it being new and some of it being young, but also not recognizing any leadership at all that related to me.
And so what made it a challenge was not being able to have those organizations that we were used to seeing in college not readily be available in the workplace.
I remember as a little kid, the family outing would be to go to a movie theater that was rented by a Filipino association that would play a Filipino movie on the big screen. And I would go there with my grandmother and my mom, and then we would watch. I didn't even understand Tagalog. I just went with them because I was a kid that couldn't be left at home. So to see the whole theater full of Filipinos enjoying this movie was great. And to see that there's the Filipino channel now, you know, and that there's multiple channels that are so accessible because of the internet or information technology. It's just amazing to see how much that has evolved.
That's almost 30 years.
That's like over 30 years.
30, 40 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we've seen it go from one movie
from reel to reel,
yeah, one movie a week to 24/7.
Yeah, live stream.
Yeah. So we saw the change in the last 40 years growing up to now seeing a lot in the media, different representation of media, and being very specific about Asian American. I think if we start to see in the next 40 years where we're not talking about,
I would like to see it not matter. I would like to see us not even notice like who's on TV or what they represent, you know,
I think
what ethnically they represent. I mean, they should just be representing their skill at what they do.
I think there's a need to educate everyone that there was this lack of representation
in the
past,
historically,
and how it was there were negative images, and we're starting to see a change, and we're starting to see movement towards being more positive, and hopefully in the next 40 years it becomes normal to just see someone on screen or in the media that we're not even thinking about their ethnic background anymore. So, you know, maybe it comes to a point where it becomes more of a game of guessing where we might be from, but even at that point, I don't think it would matter. I think I'd like to see it where we're not talking about Asian American characters, we're just talking about characters.